guys, welcome to Fishbowl Roulette. This is Sandra. Today's guest is a friend of mine, Christy Mershon, and she is a local community leader, an educator, an entrepreneur, a history enthusiast, a world traveler, and reluctant spokesperson for the cat distribution system, which I hope we get into today in the bowl because her stories of how cats find her are pretty wild. By day, she helps people learn new skills and create new opportunities through workforce, continuing education at SEMO, which is a university here in Cape Girardeau. In her spare time, I'm using air quotes for that. She doesn't really believe in spare time, which may or may not actually exist. She says she preserves local history through the Glen House. For those of you not from Cape, look it up. It's a pretty fascinating house. Beautiful, great stories. Chases ghost stories, rescues cats, and explores interesting places wherever she can find them. Travel enthusiast. So if you've ever wondered what any of these possible things have in common, well, welcome to Fishbowl Roulette today and welcome Christy Mershon. How are you?
I am very glad to be here and also a little terrified. What are the fish bowls going to give us today?
Well, we're about to find out.
I've listened to all the others because this has been, our group of mutual friends. Yeah. And it's like, oh, good Lord, please don't let me get this one or don't let me get that question.
So I actually ran into somebody last night who I've asked to be a guest and he just didn't even reply. and I'll give him the benefit of the doubt and not say his name and I was like, hey, you could at least say no, thank you. And he goes, I'm still thinking. He's like, I just am afraid that I'm going to pull something and then I'm going to say the truth. And then I don't want to say the truth. And I'm like, what?
I know that in some ways my reputation sort of can precede me, but it's great to be freed of that. Like, I'm going to say what I'm going to say.
Right. Yeah. It's like,
and then it is what it is. Right?
Yeah, exactly. It is what it is. So yeah, there's a little bit of every part of you in these bowls.
Oh,
so because you're a listener, you know how it works. You get to choose where we start.
Oh.
And I will remind you to read it out loud. It's crazy to me how many people don't remember to do that. I'm like, we are not on TV.
I'm going to telepathically send the question out to everyone, and then we'll go from there. Well, because I am who I am, I have to start with warning, right?
Okay, let's do it.
That's the one everyone's afraid of. So let's just get it out of the way.
It is because well, let's see. We're going
around to the bottom.
To you too.
This is probably going to be a doozy.
I mean, now, see, I always feel like it's a letdown.
Ooh. Oh, man. This is a great one, though. Your questions are great.
Thank you.
Like, that's been one of the most interesting things is thinking about us, like all of us that you know, and how you go out and kind of curate the questions. So my question is, are social media and technology making communities stronger or weaker? Man, that's the question of the hour, right?
Well, it is the question of the hour. And I think we'll see how you answer it, but you have kind of so many different fronts that you see that in.
Well, I mean, if you throw,
humans,
if you throw AI in there, right? Like social media and AI and how people use AI within social media and how much content is generated. I mean, obviously I am a connector.
Mm-hmm.
And so in the early days, let's go way back. Somewhere out there is a MySpace page, still lives in the ether. Trying to think of what my MySpace page had on it. I'm sure it'd be terribly embarrassing right now. But it was so cool in the early days of this technology because you began to connect with people that had moved far away or you hadn't seen in a long time. And it was like, man, this technology is going to bring us all so much closer together. I can talk to my friends in England and I can talk to them every day. And
right.
And so we had such high hopes. But I think where we're at right now, we have lost so much of what makes community because we have social media in general has become so niche, right? You can opt into your view of the world and you never have to look through anybody else's eyeballs. And it's really making us all so myopic when you open your Facebook page, when I open my Facebook page, because they're really all, if we're honest now, curated marketing tools. They're showing you exactly the world that they think you want to see to sell you the products that they think that you're most likely to buy. And in that, because we're not coming together as human beings. We forget that that's only one little piece of the world that we see through our windshield.
I think everybody's windshield has gotten so much smaller that they don't even, the fact that you're still even thinking like, that's a piece of the windshield. I think there's a lot of people that is their whole
It is.
windshield.
Yeah. It's, when you talk about all the different sort of spaces that I sit in, and I'm really lucky to occupy in higher education and in the community and in some of the fringe worlds of the community. I know we'll talk about the ghost stuff at some point.
Absolutely.
And, so getting to see how everybody's windshield is a little bit different is a privilege. But I helped work with the development of a statewide curriculum for community health workers. And CMO has a state-recognized, approved community health worker program. And one of the capstones of that, with projects that we make the students do, is something literally called a windshield assessment. So everyone is assigned the same neighborhood, and they get in their car, and they drive the neighborhood. And they describe what they see through a service lens. What's needed, what's the socioeconomic status of the neighborhood, where they see positive things, where they see challenges. And what is fascinating about that exercise is you can have 20 people in a classroom, all in their car, all in the same neighborhood, and they see 20 different things based on what their experiences are, what their background is. I may not think that a particular neighborhood is rough. I also live in a neighborhood that many people think is rough.
Yeah, that's right.
But someone else who comes from a different background may drive through and see abject poverty. They may see things that really shock and surprise them. If I live in that neighborhood, I don't see that because that's just my world. And so in that world of social media and not having to physically gather and living in these spaces that are so infinitely curated, we just continue to get fed our own worldview, and we're never forced to get in the car and drive through the other neighborhoods. And then not just the drive, the important part isn't the drive. It's the conversation afterward with the people who live in those and other neighborhoods about what they see. I was in a community stakeholder meeting yesterday, and someone kind of piped up from the corner, and he said, yeah, we were talking about downtown Cape and things that it needs and how visitors see it. And he said, respectfully, every single one of you are known figures in downtown Cape Girardeau. You don't have the same experiences in our restaurants. You don't have the same experiences in our bars as our visitors do, because everyone knows you. Because I'm like, I don't have bad experiences, but I know everyone and they're all my friends. And so my experience and my lens is very different. How often are we secret shopping our places of business, our communities? And how often are we using that same sort of work philosophy when we look at the world as a whole? So as a sort of community convener and capacity builder and nonprofit person, it's a really sort of scary thing to see us become more and more and more fragmented and isolated, while at the same time never having been closer together than we actually are at this moment.
I don't even really have anything to say to that, because that was really beautiful and well said. The one of the 12 things that are standing out, the one real thing that stands out to me is that window shield or windshield
dashboard assessment,
that
windshield assessment.
I feel like that should be done at the high school level.
Oh, absolutely.
Because maybe every time you leave one building, one grade block, you should like have some version of that, because talk about really opening somebody's eyes.
The first time,
just giving them a purpose to go look at something.
Well, the first time I ever knew that, like, holy shit, this is really changing our world, this sort of fragmentation, isolation that's coming from being able to be behind your keyboard, right? To be anywhere and nowhere, right? At the same time, I had cancer and was fairly sick back in 2012, 13, 14. And I have a very good friend from high school who was going through a divorce. And so She wanted to take her kids on a beach vacation. And when you have littles, that's hard to do by yourself. So we started an annual tradition of going to Hilton Head. And in Hilton Head, there's this outdoor mall space. And every, Thursday night, they have a kids entertainer. And he, plays little songs or whatever. And one of the things he does for the parents is he started playing jingles, right? And I don't think that I'm old. I mean, at that time, I was in my 40s, but there were a lot of folks. And so he's playing, I'm an Oscar Mayer Wiener, like all of those songs, OSCAR,
I can't remember.
Yeah, I know it's been so long since we've heard it, right? But what you saw when you looked around this pretty packed plaza of children and their parents and the division in age of parents from like very young parents to folks in their 40s, right? Was that all of us knew all those songs. We didn't have a choice. Like, you watch the same 4 channels, you listen to the same radio stations. We had this very shared recollection of what the United States was. And there was a nostalgia because across every race, across every nationality, right? Everybody knew that stuff. Right.
Yeah.
You could see everybody. But then there was a break point at a certain age. And those younger families were looking at all of us like, what in the hell are you doing? Right? And I realized, oh my God, Top 40 has changed. We had a shared language around the Dukes of Hazzard. I'm really dating myself now. Or 21 Jump Street. You take the good, you take the bad, you take them both. And then you have, I mean, like, we all
almost blew it, but I got it.
Sort of knew that stuff.
Yeah.
And regardless of where we were coming from, that was like our shared dashboard view. And it is so gone. And think about that was a while ago now. And so the nerd in me was looking at this crowd, and I just had this sort of like epitome, holy shit moment that this is going to change everything. And there are actually some really good TED Talks, Harvard and Yale, other researchers that have talked about the definitive moment. We think it's social media, but it's really, that's a piece of this larger fragmentation of how we've all become, again, so isolated, and yet at the same time, less isolated in some ways than we've ever been. But we take our own ideology and our own beliefs into every one of those because we don't
without room for anybody else.
And because we don't get exposed to anything else.
Yeah.
Travel. I mean, the best thing I can tell you. And meet people and meet in physical spaces. Be uncomfortable.
Right. I think even if you can't afford to travel, you can go say hi to a stranger right now today. You can tell somebody they have a nice pair of shoes and see what the reaction is. You can just say, oh, hey, it's hot outside today, isn't it? And like, see if a conversation strikes up. I remember in one of my sociology classes 100 years ago that one of the markers of how the structure and the sort of neighborly and all of that started to break down was when the automatic garage door came into play.
Oh, yeah, totally.
Because before that, people were raising it, coming out at the same time, taking their trash out, saying hello to their neighbors, having shared experiences at the same time. And then that just allowed us to just pop in our house, not say hi to anybody. And it seems like such a small thing. And then I think about stuff like that, and then I look at the ripple effect of what people are willing to say behind a keyboard. And it blows my mind.
Mizzou Extension does an annual, I can't remember, and if somebody from Mizzou is listening later, don't hate me, but if it is, if it's just a day or if it's a week, but I think it's Neighbor Week. And so they do their own sort of research every year of Missourians. And this year, 80% of the surveyed people could not name 3 of their neighbors.
Wow.
80%. And then I got very self-righteous and then started thinking about my neighborhood. Now, the crazy thing is I actually can't, but I used to be able to say so-and-so lives a block over and down on the corner, and so-and-so lives here, and so-and-so lives here. And now, I mean, I'm better a little than that average, but I am not where I used to be of even knowing my own neighbors. So when I say travel, it doesn't have to be across the world, although if you ever get those chances, I think you take them and don't look back. But it can really be across your community, because the neighborhood that I live in and the neighborhood that the vast majority of my friends live in are very different. I see a very different part of Cape Girardeau every single day. And so our perspectives of all that we bring into every room are vital to this idea of building community. It's not about making, a homogenous community. It's about learning who's there and understanding each other and realizing that it's really kind of a beautiful thing when you have differences.
Agreed. I don't even know what the question was.
Going all the way back, is social media fragmenting us, or is it good for us?
I think it's clear it is fragmenting us at this stage. That's just what's happening.
And that was the easiest warning question. Look, I thought I was going to get something painful based on
I don't know that
these
anything. I don't think there's anything that you will find painful. You're pretty on par with all of it, I think. So.
I'm pretty much an open book. Yeah, so I am what I am.
Where are we going to next?
What are we going to do? Let's do beliefs. I figured that's probably where you've got some of the funky stuff queued
I
up.
hope the funky stuff. If it doesn't, I'm going to find a way to work it. We're working in a ghost story. I can tell you that. No matter what.
Look, this is
and for everybody who doesn't know why, it'll make sense later.
Oh, this is not where I thought you'd go with this. I'm really getting all the community building stuff.
Well, there's probably a reason. I am going to tell you, I am convinced there is always a theme for the guests, and I don't know why, because if you would read all the questions, you would see they're not all the same. There's a reason that you are here to talk about that then today.
This is your version of tarot cards, because I say the same thing. Yeah. I can teach all the ways that tarot cards are just self-reflective practice, but I cannot tell you why the various cards fall the way they do.
Yep.
Should communities prioritize growth even when it changes their identity? Listen, so I'll flip that and say, what's identity? How many times, because there's two of us in this room, you guys can't see us, but for Tyler and Sandra, how many times was your identity changed in the course of your life? I hope a couple, because if not, you're stuck.
Yeah.
Right? And so if our community should be living and breathing and a reflection of us, and I hope to hell none of us stay the same for the next 100 years.
So let me throw this at you. I agree with you. So I'm born and raised here. I actually just had lunch yesterday with Jennifer Cotner. She and I graduated together, went to school here.
Love me some Jen.
And shout out Jen Cotner. So we were talking, and she goes, "Isn't it wild that the population of Cape is the same as when we graduated?" And most people don't believe me when I say that. Yeah. I'm like, in 1988, I think it was 36,000, and the city of Cape is right around 40. Now, does that mean that we are not growing and not changing? I don't think so mostly. I do think that Cape sometimes does struggle, as a lot of small towns across the United States would, with holding on to some form of, they think it's an anchor, but it really gets in their way. To certain kinds of growth.
And a lot of it is nostalgia, right? But the funny thing about nostalgia, it's I don't have kids, I have cats, but all of my friends who have kids, they'll talk about how childbirth is awful, but you forget about it. And then you have the second child, right? I think every single era that we live through, and I have to remind myself if I turn the news on of this daily, that every single generation has experienced the worst of something, right? Something was just terrible, something was just awful. And we all live through those growth phases. I can't talk today. But then
cat got your tongue.
Cat got my tongue. Oh, har, 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 har. But I think then we romanticize it, right? The 50s were full of racism and sexism and lots of other isms, right?
Yep.
But all we want to remember is that Ozzie and Harriet kind of romanticized vision. And so I think very often, even when communities are grasping at that, they're grasping at the fairy tale of what a moment in time was, more so than what it actually was, because everybody fears change.
Yeah.
And I do get it. And I think there's something to be said. I love history. And so I have seen communities that have also lost their soul in growth, right? And that's unfortunate. And you see it in a lot of the tourism communities. Places like, one of my favorite cities is New Orleans, and I love Savannah. You see the effects of gentrification. You see the effects of Airbnbs and cost of living driving out the creatives and the artists and the musicians that become the soul of a place. So in that respect, I think you have to be careful not to lose the core of who you are and of your soul, it's the same as if we're talking about each other, right? I am very much like I was when I sit with my friends that I grew up with. They will tell you this. There's a lot of me that's still 18 years old, right? But there are huge parts of me that have also changed. And I hope that when I take my last breath, that I have been able to hold on to the things that make me uniquely me and let go of the shit that doesn't matter. And when you look at it in a community building sense, I think a lot of times what we're trying to do is to hold on to some of that stuff. If we get rid of the cobblestones on Main Street, it won't be the same anymore. Well, the heart of our downtown wasn't in the cobblestones.
Right.
It was in the people and the stories and the businesses and the river. And, so what you can parse through for strategic growth, for smart growth, and what is the heart and soul of the place that you live, I think that's the tough challenge of city leadership anywhere, is to be able to maintain our unique community identities. I'll make a lot of people angry when I say this, but I think Paducah has done it really, really well. But they also got a UNESCO designation for being a creative city. So they have to, as a part of the foundation of their economic development, they have to hang on to those creative parts. And part of that creative city designation came from the linear connection with their history, heritage, and past, right? So their leadership is consistently asking, if we change this landmark in downtown, if we let this factory build, if we do this or if we do that, what do we give up in this thing that makes us uniquely us to gain what we need in our financial portfolio right now? And it's a fine line.
Yeah,
Leadership
that's a balancing
is hard.
Mm-hmm.
It's much easier to sit. I think of the Muppets and the two guys that set up
Judges.
the two judges that sat above and judge.
They're
It's much
mean.
easier to be up there and complain about everything than it is to be in the muck of governance. But I do think when you hold on too tight, you can strangle the thing you love.
Yeah, I mean. It's an interesting, I don't want to just apply it to Cape. Obviously, this is Cape Girardeau, Missouri, where we're living, breathing, and doing this podcast from. But it's an interesting thing to think about because it is a fine line. Leadership is really hard. At the end of the day, what does it all go back to? It goes back to community.
Right.
And when community's fracturing, government tends to seem bigger than it is.
Right.
Because nobody's paying attention or participating. And we don't want to listen to somebody else. And then you think about okay, so how does a town like Cape grow? Cape is an interesting, 2 hospitals, a university, P&G. Those are the biggest industries, right?
Mm-hmm.
Did I miss one? And
if you look at the market codes, right, because the other nerdy thing that I've been over is Center for Economic Business Community Engagement, right? So we have small business development and all of those things with a lot of data that comes in. So by data, the largest employment sector of Cape Girardeau, Missouri is nonprofit because of what you named. Our schools, the university, the hospitals, all technically nonprofit. And then also being the largest community before you get to a very large rural area.
Yep.
So a lot of our service organizations that serve those folks are actually housed here and then serving really a 6-county region all the way down to the state line. So you get this really unique mixture of we are in some ways, the house on the hill that services roll out of for our entire service region. And that's what makes also these growth challenges even harder. It's a tough situation to be in to, again, hold on to your soul, but realize that sometimes you have to shed. A few years ago, I think you knew I had a personal assistant program technician that worked for me for years. And the only thing consistent at the university for the last, 15 years has been massive change. Higher education has undergone an incredible, in some ways good, in some ways not so good, change in the almost 30 years of my career. And so I come into my office and he has this big picture from, Simba. Lion King. And it is Simba holding on, and I think Scar is above the cliff, and he's holding on for dear life and looks terrified. And he's made a poster out of this because he's a little snot, and it said, Christy, holding on to her title. And I was like, oh, oh, you're a dead man.
You're dead, you're fired, you're all the things.
But then I started laughing because the humor of the ridiculousness of all of this change, right? All of this change. And I was so upset that like a title was changing. You know, it was a big deal to me.
Yeah.
I'm first generation college. It felt insulting. You're right. You're okay to have feelings in those moments of change, but it was also so stupid.
It kind of brought it home for you.
And it just, the humor of it all, I think I laughed until I cried and snotted. And he was very, very good at making me do that. But I think we all have those moments, right? We feel like if we give up this line, we lose all the things. And I think that that's what communities like Cape have struggled with, and the larger stakeholder, right? Because if we, when I go back to that nonprofit conversation, when you're on an airplane and they tell you like if the oxygen masks, drop, understand that so many people in this community are responsible for things and projects that they know have literal life and death or huge economic repercussions for a ripple out region that has very little resource. So when we fail at something, we not only fail ourselves and our populace, we fail a huge region. And it's an enormous weight for the people. And I've been lucky or unlucky enough to be in some of those rooms at different points in my career. And those are heavy, hard conversations. Whether the right decisions or the wrong decisions are made, they're not being made in a vacuum, right? And people really are trying.
Real people are making the decisions, and real people are being affected by the decisions.
Right or wrong.
I think if I was listening to this, I would want to know this. You ever going to run for an office?
No.
Why?
I have run for office. I ran for city council and was tied. We were the first, Nate Thomas and I tied. Hi, Nate. And we were the first full tie. They were down a couple of councilmen, and they did not have a structure to mediate a tie. And so I ended up
just saying I'm done. I'm out.
Yeah. And so
what drove you to that? I mean, you have a heart for service, so but there's always a triggering event.
Yeah, in that specific case, it was things going on in my own neighborhood. I've owned a house on Coke Avenue, so that's Jefferson, a school neighborhood, now considered the South Side, but I would argue not the true South Side, more Midtown at one point. And there were votes out about the school, the aquatic center that was being put at Jefferson School. And there were a lot of public feelings, and I knew what a big deal that could be to kids in my neighborhood. And I've not always lived in that house, but for the majority of the years I've owned it, bought it in 96, I have. I've rented it a few times. So I've had the experience of being both a landlord and living in those neighborhoods. And I see so many people, that used to be a neighborhood of starter homes. And so everyone that I lived around has moved on to other parts of town. I divorced twice, so we won't talk about my love life. That should have been in the warnings bucket.
I don't think I put that in the bowl.
But I'll be very honest, like coming back to that space in as I was nearing 50, in some ways felt like failure, but then COVID happened, right? And I realized that it was really sort of a returning to a space, and looked around and realized that I had some capacity through both education, my job, the people that I knew, to maybe impact change in that part of the neighborhood. Because what's fascinating, and it's been redistricted, so now Tamika Randall is my city council representative, but at that time Nate was. But that area that goes all the way to South Cape also extends over to like the university. So when you think of who gets the most sort of resource, it's the areas that are making that are much more important to the economic engine. And so there were some issues with landlords that I could see. There were some other things, and I just thought some of this is wrong, and I can maybe make a difference. But in the end, I'm involved in a lot of other things. What people don't realize is city council is only one piece of a larger machine that makes the community work. And so one of the things that I would have had to do was leave a lot of other sort of community involved positions that I was in. And in some ways, I have more voice continuing to
Half
be
of
involved.
Cape would have collapsed. And I'm sure
No, that is
every
not.
town in America has some version of that, right? Like there's there's people that are deeply involved and there's people who are on the fringes. I'm on the fringe and I'm okay with that. But before we dive into the next poll, I do, if there's somebody listening, like what's two very quick and easy ways somebody wants to get involved, they want to learn a little bit more about their own community. What are their first steps?
Well, I mean, again, it starts with you can't decide you want to be involved from the back of a keyboard. Get into your community. And I don't care where it is that you go. It can be the corner pub or it can be the county fair. I mean, you need to go where people are, number one, because a lot of folks seem to want to be very involved from a distance where there's no repercussion for the things that they say or do, right? And then it's really like, what is your passion, right? Because you're going to be most effective, I would argue, anytime somebody is new here. And at the university for all of these years, I was the director of training and development for a long time. So I worked with our new faculty and staff, and I've had a bunch of different roles over the years. But I would meet the new faculty and staff at our sort of welcome things. And I would say, like, what are you into? Like, not the classroom, not work. What do you like? Like, what are you passionate about? And then find the ways to connect with those things that you're interested in. Find some like-minded folks, help, learn from them. I know it's hard to believe, but sometimes you have to sit down and not talk. I'm not always good at that. But to sort of listen to what's going on in your community. And then if you find those people, they will sort of help guide you to the other people that can be impactful.
That's great.
And then use your voice. Like if you feel a certain way, I get so frustrated, and you know this, we've talked about it, about the people who will sit in the back corner and talk about something, but then they're in a public forum or a public meeting.
Act like they've never even heard the topic.
Right. You have a voice, and your voice is powerful, and so you have to use it.
Yeah, there's people definitely can fall into that protection mode, and on some level, I get it, but at the end of the day, I don't know. Nothing changes if we don't speak what's happening in our hearts and minds. We just had a little situation, very, very tiny in our office where a question was put out to the office. One person responded. A decision was made. Well, then after the fact,
everybody was upset.
Right.
You didn't speak up.
Not everybody, but and I'm like, okay, but you didn't respond until, and it wasn't a timing issue. It was, well, I thought maybe the right decision was going to get made. Well, it's a decision. There's really no right or wrong in this. Like, you just speak up. How do you want something to go?
Well, and I fully understand the concept of protecting your peace, right? That's important too. Not every battle is a battle worth fighting. And so all of that is sort of an internal thing that you have to come to on your own. And when you can win a battle and when you can't. But the other side of it, I think, too, is back to the first question. It is okay to disagree with people as long as we do it civilly, right?
Yeah.
It's okay to have opposing opinions. I have a friend that it can be very, very controversial, and he and I have gone at it on social media because I've said something and he's come after me. I know him.
I think I know him.
Doesn't upset me, but it upsets other people, right?
Yeah.
And so he came to my office with a little present that he found for me the other day and dropped in. And I said, I think perhaps because when we do that, it upsets people when we do that on social media, right? It is good to have people in your world that you disagree with.
Absolutely.
But that doesn't mean you have to do it on a social platform, right? And it goes again back to the knowing when you and I've had uncomfortable conversations before, right?
Yeah.
And so it's like knowing when to just reach out to you and go, hey, can we talk about this? And not blast somebody on social about something. And also, if that is happening in protecting your peace, you don't have to jump into that. You don't have to jump in the middle of every situation that upsets you. But what is your personal boundary? And then if it is truly worth it to you, if it's impacting your quality of life, if it's impacting the quality of life of people around you, then it may be that you want to speak up. And then if you don't, you really can't. And the number of people who don't like where we are politically, and then at the end they're like, well, I didn't vote because I didn't have a good choice. Well, then don't talk to me about it.
Right.
Right. Like, I didn't like the choices either, but like,
but here we are.
You make the choice you make and then deal with it.
Yeah. I say all the time, I just said it yesterday to somebody. I said, sometimes the price to be right
is not worth it.
Really, really high. And you can walk away without having had the last word. You can walk away and still believe what you believe, do what you do, like think all the things. You don't have to burn the damn bridge every time.
And I can't remember. I do believe one of the famous generals was the one who coined, do you want to be right or do you want to win? Right? Because if you're playing long game, if you want to win, you can know that you were right and walk away from something and come back at it
absolutely
various ways. And very often, if you're pushing for change, I'll be honest, you have to do that. There are a lot of people who wish I would go mute because I will very often walk away, think about something, and come back at it from another direction. If that doesn't work, I'll walk away and come back at it from another direction.
Yeah.
And I don't like people who immediately acquiesce to what I think is right or wrong. You're not convicted if you don't fight with me. Like, if you didn't believe something enough to come back and sort of argue that point, then you really didn't believe it. So you have to, both from your own perspective and from the perspective of the person that you're disagreeing with, if we just would all understand, that's actually not a bad thing. That means that somebody has really sort of, invested enough in something to be passionate and care. It's when people are apathetic. And again, all the way back to the first question, that's where I think so many people are now, is they're apathetic or disenfranchised, not just politically, but with their communities, in their relationships, right? We're all just sort of like settling because we think that that's all that there is. And if we let ourselves get to that point, it's all there ever will be.
Yeah, agreed. That's now I'm reviewing all the doom scrolling I've done in my head. Yeah, that's very true. Okay, what do we have up next? And if it's not a ghost story, we're going to pivot to that after this question.
Okay, we're going to the guest bowl because maybe that's where you put them.
I don't know. If it comes out of community again, I don't even know what to say.
Yeah,
I'll be your campaign manager, I guess.
Right? No, we're not doing that. Oh, shit.
Is it community?
It's small business.
Get out of here.
For what makes a small business survive when others don't? In some cases, it's luck. Right. I would have had very different answers pre-2020, but there were so many people, like the pandemic happened and it was just where you were and what was going on at that given time and just the wheel of the dice rolled. But grit, determination.
But don't you think, like, thinking about some of the previous things that you have said, right? Like, so apathetic and detachment and a lack of real communication, even though we can communicate 15,000 different ways, has developed into, or feels like sometimes, a lack of grit, a lack of determination, because there's always something
entrepreneurship
to be by.
Is hard. So I have both supervised our small business development center and been, which was a whole learning curve. Jacob left, the director of the Small Business Development Center. And so then for the next year, I was the director while we found another director. So it's very different to be somebody's boss and then have to walk in their shoes, literally. And so, if you don't know, we pay taxes. There's an appropriation given to the Small Business Administration on the federal level. And the feds then ship money to each state. In the state of Missouri, Mizzou has the contract for small business assistance, technical assistance. Free help is basically what that is. And then they ship it out across the state to different centers. And Southeast Missouri State University houses the Small Business Development Center of Southeast Missouri, which serves all of the counties of Southeast Missouri. And so we get all of the folks who are seeking assistance. And that's step one, to know that like there's assistance and that you need it. So they come in and you sit down and they give you your business idea and they talk about where they're at in the process. And there's a pretty sort of standardized, like, have you done this? Have you done this? Have you done this? 80% of those clients we'll never see again because you give them the list and then it's daunting and it's hard. So that's step one. And then that's just the beginning, right? Like you get through that step and then you've got to take the next step. And then the work isn't ever done because the market's always changing and you have to reposition.
Right.
And so grit.
There's a belief in the world that, and by the way, I'm a salaried employee, so I'm not saying this to say anything against salaried employees. There's a belief that having a salaried job is safe. Now, I get where that comes from because you know how much you're going to get paid. You know what the expectations are. You know what the hours are more than likely. There's a knowledge. But the average age of layoff in this country is like 45 to 47, which is the worst time to possibly get laid off.
But it's also going to be different, I will say, because I'm looking at you, Tyler, and you're younger than we are.
Tommy,
damn it, Tommy. I don't know why
He's
I
like,
went
just call
Tyler.
me Tyler now, Sandra.
Just do. You'll be a good Tyler. But I'm looking at Tommy because he's younger than we are, and I'm wondering, like, you're not on the spotlight, but what's the average number of years you've worked at a job? Do you think?
We'll have to repeat what his answer is.
Yes, I can repeat it. He's thinking real hard.
16.
Oh gosh, you're an anomaly. So he's saying.
No.
He's saying 16. So like the national averages are more like 2 to 3 because below Gen X, right? Millennials and below are tending to be somewhere between 2 to 5 and then revolving on up, right?
Right.
And that's not dumb.
You said one job?
Yes.
Yeah,
one
job. One job.
4.
Oh, 4 years. Okay. So Tommy way back in because he's like, oh, wait a minute. No, it's a 4.
Misunderstood the question.
Right. But I mean, I think that's indicative because what's happened to the generation that is now, 47, 48, very often we came or were brought up by previous generations who said, you work the good job, you have the benefits, you retire out of the job, right? And for those folks, the promise is really being broken because if you've been consistent in a job or an industry all of your life and then you are laid off at that age, you are genuinely screwed, right?
Yeah.
What I'm seeing in younger generations, because you haven't done that, and it's interesting if you interview younger people, also we would have almost accused that, and you work in recruiting, of being job jumping. But honestly, it's almost like skill collecting because they're not always just leaving jobs. They're leaving industries, but they're taking my customer service skills were really good. So now I've leveraged them into insurance. And then I left insurance and I went and now I'm, doing something totally different, but I'm using both these legal things that I learned here and my customer service skills. There is a different set of skills being gained.
That's an interesting way to look at that.
That is hopefully making the future a bit more adaptive because they're growing up in a space, they have grown up and are moving through their careers in a space where they know that those quote unquote good jobs and that job security of being employed by a company. Also, if you look at statistics, the number of people with a side hustle, people are working those jobs, right? I've had the same job for almost 30 years. I got my LLC. I've got my side hustles because we know that the world is much more uncertain. So that world of my parents, my mom worked 62 or 64 years for the Lincoln County School District, right? My father was a union construction worker, retired, went back to work because they had a labor shortage, retired, went back to work, did that 3 times, but had a career of over 50 years working construction. His hands are still permanently bent like he's holding a hammer, right? those jobs are just not really in existence anymore. And so that future and that stability in reality is probably a bit gone. It's probably a thing of the past. But that doesn't mean that you can't continue to, build your skills and progress through a career throughout your life.
Yeah, that's very interesting. And then tying it back to like, why do small businesses fail? So there's a lot of reasons, right?
There are a lot of reasons, but the biggest thing is really probably how determined are you? And then honestly, all these questions have wrapped together. Community, and you can't quit growing.
Yep.
If you get so tied, think about all the retail failures, those brands that were so tied to something that just isn't anymore, right? If you have no continual future plan for agility, like I listened in the car to your interview with Carissa, right?
Yep.
Carissa has 27, and she's a good friend too, 27 ideas every day.
Yeah, her brain, I don't even know what to do with her brain.
Always thinking about the next thing to do, the next thing to innovate. Jason, Ray, same thing, always the next thing to do, the next thing. So I think it's that, right? And part of how you get that uplift is you stay tied to your community. You have to know what your community, what your client base, what they want and how their needs and wants are changing. You have to always stay tied into that. And then you have to set yourself up to be agile. And then you can't give up even when the going gets tough.
Yeah, that's the key.
So,
right there.
it's a 3-step process.
And by the way, you're going to work more than 40 hours a week. I don't know how.
Oh, yeah, no.
It's just what it is.
Yeah. Work is life. Life is work.
Work-life balance. Yeah, that's not a thing.
And I would love to choke the person who said, if you love what you do, you never work a day in your life. Bull.
Right.
And I edited that. That is absolute crap because you'll still work your ass off, right?
Yeah.
You may just love what you do.
Exactly. So it doesn't seem as grueling. And most of the time, I love what I do. I love recruiting. I love developing. And I love getting to do this with my, but there is a lot of work that goes into it. And I probably said it 5 times on here. There are days where I'm like, I think being a Walmart greeter sounds great.
Yeah.
That sounds fine.
And I've asked myself, because I can retire, right? And that's unbelievable to me because I don't think about gosh, I've been at the university. I still am I'm a kid like you guys, except I got gray hair and I've gained 50 pounds.
Well,
wait a minute, maybe I'm not oops. But I do, kind of look at all of this and it's it passes by so quickly.
Oh.
And you think, how am I the adultiest adult in the room?
I know.
But, if you never
I always thought I would know more. I really did. I really thought I would know more by now. And while I do know more than I did, the answers are different, I think, than what I thought they might look like.
Yeah, definitely. But the whole thing too, I work with young people and have been really fortunate to have just an incredible career of crazy, I didn't hear the bio that you read for me, but I can only imagine kind of crazy experiences knitted together in a way that don't make sense, but have ended up being sort of perfect for me.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't change even the terrible things. I wouldn't change any of that because I have just really loved it. Even the things that I hated and that toughened me up for the next thing that was coming. And I wouldn't have survived that if I hadn't gone through.
Yeah, it's an interesting thing to start looking at. What thread would I pull out if I could? And then you think, well, what happens to the rest of the threads?
Yeah.
What's that look like?
But it's weird when you're where I started to go with that is so I'm close to the end of that one career and I still feel well, what do I want to do when I grow up, right? What is the next thing that I want to do? And what is the next thing that I want to accomplish?
But what a beautiful gift, because I know a lot of people who are our age and a little bit older who have already called it a day.
Oh, girl, I'm tired sometimes, but I'm not ready.
Me too, but one thing I can clearly see, having watching my parents now in the aging process, 86 and almost 88, or almost 85 and almost 88. I don't know. I can't, something like that. Anyway, your world gets smaller and you stop having less new experiences.
Yep.
And that shuts everything down on a quicker level. And I want to go and have as many new experiences and meet new people and see new things and figure out new tough things for as long as I can.
And that's the common thread in the people, they'll interview someone on TV. It's 102, 104, right? And their common thread is always that kind of thing, that they just always sort of kept moving forward. So
yeah, I think that's really the key.
Yeah.
Okay, I don't even know if I want you to pull another question because I really want you to tell a ghost story. So I think we just have to pivot at this stage.
Okay. Well, so I'm sort of like the most unlikely ghost storyteller.
Some might say ghost whisperer.
I wish I was cute like her. But I'm like literally phobically afraid of the dark. So if you ever come to my house, there's night lights and stuff everywhere. I truly am. Growing up, I was way more of the sort of hocus pocus. I didn't like scary movies. That was really, Jaws terrified me when I was little.
Jaws was terrifying. Are you kidding me?
And then there was some movie, I don't remember if you remember it, that traumatized me. There were alligators in the sewers in New York, I think, and they were coming up out of the toilets.
Yeah, what?
Yeah, and so like Girl Scout camp and the porta potties, it was a terrifying thing because I was like, what's in there?
Also, by the way, those are terrifying on their own.
Listen. But so a lot of the sort of ghost story stuff came about after 9/11. Wow, I'm really dating myself. There was a drop in the sales tax revenue in the state of Missouri. And what I did and do for the university are outward-facing programs. So we had huge budget cuts, and we had to start thinking about programming in different ways. And I went to the University of Missouri, St. Louis for some sort of a workshop. And there were flyers. They were doing a ghost hunting sort of class with the St. Louis Paranormal Research Society. And I was like, well, I mean, if Umzel's doing it, how they said they were selling these classes out because the TV show Ghost Hunters had come on and it was very, very popular. And so I came back here terrifyingly. I pitched this idea to my boss and she goes, well, I mean, if you want to pitch that to Ken Dobbins. And so I had to go in front of Dr. Dobbins at the time, who terrified me all the way until he retired. And I took my financial plan because I got numbers from SLU and he was a numbers guy. So the numbers were like, yeah, I mean, you can make revenue, go for it. I had to go first through, gosh, I'm trying to remember who my dean was. Maybe Randy Shaw. I don't know. It was a terrifying set of interview type things I had to go through to pitch this class.
I'm here today to talk to you about ghosts and making money.
And how higher education,
don't fire me.
How higher education should involve themselves in. And so a big part of that, because SEMO has a historic preservation program, was essentially it's cultural memory, and ghost stories are really just history repackaged, right? And so I could sort of make a roundabout play. So it's a story that I tell in a lot of my ghost tours. I had just gotten a brand new online payment platform, and I set the course up with my staff on a Friday night, and we went home for the weekend, came back on Monday, and there were like 150 people enrolled in Ghost Hunting 101. And if you've ever watched the TV shows, you can't really take 150 people on a ghost hunt in a spooky place because there's no way to get evidence, right? So never planned on becoming the ghost guide of Cape Girardeau, but I was like, oh, crap, like, what am I going to do? So we sat around. My staff was phenomenal, and we came up with this plan. I rented, true story, every 15-passenger van, basically south of St. Louis and north of Memphis. I had a fleet of 15-passenger vans, and every friend, what are you doing on this weekend? And if they said, I'm free, I'm like, ha-ha.
You're driving.
Yeah. And so then I started going around and saying, does Cape Girardeau have any ghost stories, right? And in some ways, it's like Pandora's box. You start asking, and people are telling you stories, and then stories on top of stories. And so in that first year, basically I made ghost story scripts and I gave them to each of the drivers, and we would drop 15 people off at a location. And then we would like rotate people, come back, pick up people. It was a logistical nightmare. But we used, I know we used the Pike Lodge that year. Maybe Old Warmer Cemetery, and I can't remember the other.
Terrifying in their own right.
And maybe Port, I don't know, because we did that workshop kind of thing for a long time, and it sold out every single time. But what people learned very quickly is that ghost hunting, if you actually do it the right way, it's really sort of boring. Like, you're late at night sitting in a room with a bunch of equipment being quiet, and people are sleepy, and it's not as exciting. but they loved the ghost stories. And so the ghost stories themselves sort of morphed into a number of different, I've done UFO tours. I've worked with groups that TG has brought in from their home offices, at Toyota's home offices. Like I've probably, over the course of telling stories, told Cape Girardeau's haunted history to over 10,000 people, and that's a conservative number.
That's a crazy number.
Locals, guests, which is why so many people know me for those ghost things.
What's
Cape's
most haunted building? Is it the Glen House?
I think the Glen House got the most press because Joel Rhodes, there was an offer to write there's a bunch of regional history books, Haunted St. Louis, Haunted Cape Girardeau, and it was pitched and no one really wanted to do it, honestly, and Dr. Rhodes said he would, but he didn't really know the ghost stories, but he's an excellent writer. So he and I sat down and I gave him sort of my ghost stories, but he put the Glen House on the front, and there are lots of stories. I would argue, and I'm always careful because it's privately owned, that the most probably legitimized one is the Sherwood Minton House, which is up near Washington Cemetery. It's up on the hill on Washington Street by Old Lorimer Cemetery. I combined the two.
I have a very odd feeling right now.
It was a hospital during the Civil War.
That's the odd feeling.
And it's the only house I know of that when it was sold, it has a little rider. The house is commonly thought to be haunted. So there are an incredible number of stories about the Sherwood Minton House. But
do people live there now?
Yes. Yeah, and I'm always careful because it is privately owned. I do use it on tours and things, but probably, so back to that first night,
I know what I'm
right?
Googling.
So understand that, like, I started telling these stories because I did like a campfire ghost story, right? I do love history. I loved the salacious history, so-and-so had an affair and shot so-and-so.
Right.
I mean, the Peyton Place of ghost
Fell down
stories.
the stairs.
Yes.
Stabbed in the heart.
Yes. The Dallas of ghost stories, right? Or do you remember there was an old soap opera called Passions, and it was a paranormal. Oh, yeah. I loved Passions, right? So, I mean, that kind of campy stuff, yes. But I didn't go into it because I wanted to find things that go bump in the night, right? None of that. But so I do this first year of tours, and I'm like halfway through that night, and there's a classroom class on Friday night that teaches you how to be a good ghost hunter, and it's like, make sure you have fresh batteries, make sure you do this, and don't drink, don't come impaired, all the rules of ghost hunting. So I drop 15 newly minted ghost hunters with all of their stuff, freshly charged or fresh batteries, off at Old Lorimer Cemetery. And I start to drive my 15-passenger van away, and I see as I'm driving away that all of my people have stopped, like, right inside the gate. And at that time, Old Lorimer had some stuff. There'd been a shooting. There was some other stuff. And I was like, oh, man, somebody's OD'd in the cemetery. Like, there's something bad. So I back up, and I go in, and 15 people all experienced every electronic device that they had going just completely dead at the same time.
Oh,
and my ghost hunters were like,
chills.
My ghost hunters were taking pictures or whatever. And so I was like, oh, I mean, well, that's weird, right? And then you try and put it in a box.
Right.
And you kind of continue on. And then the following year, I had a couple, and in my going around town tour, I had to slow things down. So I got him out of the 15-passenger van at the Indie House, where Lori Everett has the Indie House, right, on Broadway, which was an old hospital and was also the site of a pretty gruesome murder in the 70s. And I'm telling them the story, and there is a gentleman who is there, and he proceeds to come to me, and they live in Florida now, but he was one of the officers who investigated that particular murder. And he was back here to visit some other friends that still lived here. And he said the reason that we decided to do this tonight, we were in town, was because, and he tells me that he investigated, and he said a week or so after the murder, he came, he said the crime scene tape was still up on the door and he had to do something. And he walked into the house. which is now the Indie House. And he said, and I saw her fall.
Oh my gosh.
And he had tears in his eyes, and his wife had her arm on his shoulder. And he was a very, very, very nice man,
yeah,
right?
This was not right.
And I said, I beg your pardon, and he said, no, I saw her fall, and she looked at me. And he was gone, had retired or left. I can't remember which, the force before they found out who actually committed that murder. But it had haunted him for the rest of his career. And he said, I was a lapsed Catholic. And he goes, and he and his wife both, and he said, I went back to church. But
wow.
But it was, those two things were the start of sort of a realization that this might not be just the stories. It's different when you watch a TV show or when you think you can put someone in a box. And I'm sure plenty of people over the years have put me in a box and been like, it's that crazy, whatever. But, as far as the Glenn House, from the 1940s on, and probably before that, but there are documented stories going all the way back to the 40s of ghost stories about that house, but it wasn't socially acceptable to say that sort of thing. So every one of the little ladies that was working in the house, like most of them had some strange story, but it was just not something you publicly spoke about. And so when you begin to meet people and have conversations, I'll never forget when I was collecting those ghost stories, sitting in the rocking chairs on the back porch of the Glenn House with Frank Nichol. And Dr. Nichol's gone now, but he laughed and he said, well, and he was a folklorist and historian, worked at the university, was over our Center for Regional History for a long time. And he said, laughed at me, Miss Mershon, I just don't believe in those things. Except for that one time. And he had been on the board.
He said, except for that one time.
He had been on the board.
Except for the one time.
Except there was that one story. And that's really like the Glenn House and other places like it. It's really when those people tell you I don't really believe in this, except this thing I can't explain happened, right? So he was on the board there, and I'm going to guess by who he said was around the table that it would have been probably the early 80s, because the house became they started renovation in like 67 and opened up in 74. So I'm going to say in the 80s. And they had a board meeting. At that time, they had a grad student who lived in the carriage house. So their board meetings would be around the dining room table. And there's so many doors, exterior doors on that house, that the practice is just to come in the kitchen door. And everybody knows it, because if you start unlocking doors, it's hard to verify. Right. You get them all locked back up. So they all come in the kitchen door. They're sitting around the dining room table. And they hear the front door open, and they hear footsteps, loud footsteps go up the wooden staircase. Now it's got a runner on it, but at that time they said it didn't. And they hear someone walking around up above. And so they stop the meeting and they go and they check, and the front door is still locked, and they don't find anyone upstairs, and they go back and they resume their meeting. Now, once upon a time, I could have told you, and there is a ledger book upstairs in the carriage house, because I had to find it when ghost hunters came to prove the veracity of the story. But this was such a particular board, some pretty famous national names in there now, right? That were sitting around that table, that they started their meeting at like 6:00. And at 6:20, they document in the minutes that they heard a noise, and they paused the meeting, and they timestamp it. And then they timestamp finding nothing, that they start the meeting back up about 45 minutes later. So there's a ghost story in the handwritten minutes of a 501c that had some
interesting.
So, and again, a younger version of me. So when we talk about change and letting go of things, because I am afraid of the dark and I am sort of scared of that sort of stuff, it was very, very hard for me to let go of the beliefs that I had around like God and ghosts and what might be possible. Because when you open the door for one thing, are you opening the door for all of the things, right? And it reshapes what you believe. It's also your finite belief that somebody who says all of this stuff is obviously nuts, or somebody who says that these things can't be real is obviously sane, right? It really sort of begins to bend the ideas of what you think are true and false and real about the world, and put it all back together again.
The more I have learned about just energy.
Yeah.
Just energy. and how connected we all are all the time. I don't know what happens to I don't know what happens to a soul. I hope that Streets of Gold are fantastic, and I hope that that's exact. And I'm a Christian. But none of us have all the answers. Who am I to say?
Yeah.
I mean, if we believe in a soul, well, soul has to go somewhere. Well, can't a soul get trapped? Maybe it chooses to be. I don't know. I don't know. I'm open. I don't mess with dark things. That's not my. I don't.
And weirdly enough, like I'm not a Ouija board. Like that. None of that is my. And I. What's funny is we have a lot of folks that come to the Glen House now that want to find ghosts or whatever, and they're very inclusive. That is what I've learned over the years. No,
a very inclusive group.
But what I've learned over the years is that the ghost hunting sort of community does tend to be inclusive. They're open to a whole lot of stuff because they've and so they're always like, "Do you want to participate?" And I'm like, I don't. For my own personal version of truth, I don't need to seek out whether they're real or not. I have now, after over 20 years of doing some of this stuff, I have formed my own very sort of definitive beliefs that, yep. And even though I'm still sort of uncomfortable with it. And I'll also tell you that I'm sort of uncomfortable, ghost tourism is a $1 billion industry now. Think about that with a B. It's crazy. And when you go to cities like New Orleans and Savannah or even Detroit, right? Like you will find a ghost tour or ghost tours in almost every major city now. Again, I think they're a great way to learn about the history. People have, I'm used to being controversial at this point, what's real history? What's fake history? Are you spreading lies and rumors? Here's my thought on this. If I tell a story and you care so much about it when you leave that you go research all the history and you send me a 7-page email about exactly what happened in the Battle of Cape Girardeau, I have done my job.
Yeah.
Because it should be the gateway drug to making you love history and love this region and to explore the possibilities, right? And then I would say, come spend just an average all-day Saturday with me at this house and see if you don't begin to sort of reshape what you think. But
I'm coming up with a book title for you right now. And it starts with like Ghosts, the gateway drug to history.
But
you're not wrong. People want a little intrigue, right? We want a hook. But you're exactly right. Like somebody goes and is like, well, here's how that really went down. Great. What'd you learn? That's fantastic.
There's a great book. The title is not this, but it's very close to this. I always misphrase the title, but it's The Anarchist Guide to History or Historic Preservation. And it's a practitioner's book for students or people who are preserving sites. And it's basically throwing out some of all of those rules. Now, the thing is, the Glen House is not a haunted attraction. We are not manufacturing sounds and shapes and smells. Right. And like it is a house museum. Yes. House. And so if something happens to you, it happens to you. And if I'm downstairs, I didn't play something or cause a cold spot or do whatever because that just
picture
isn't
you as the wizard.
I'm not doing
behind the curtain
any of that.
Making it all happen.
And very often, because I laugh, and there are people in this community who've been on ghost tours, like I have gotten scared and I'm like, I'll be outside the door. And so if y'all want to come out, I'll come back in about 5 minutes and get you out of here. But I am done today.
Had a feeling I'm out.
Yeah, I'm like, I'm done. Like, be respectful. Please take care of everything. Like, we'll be back in 5 minutes. But so anyway, those are the stories. And I think, again, the wraparound of all of this is what I learned is it was harder. There were so many years in the beginning of this. I'll never forget one particular experience. I walked through the whole house and I'm like, okay, if a train came by, it may have rattled and then that door would have shut. And then if this happened, that would have happened. And I got into this multi-layered kind of explanation of how all the things that had happened.
Here's how that domino fell.
And then I realized that was way more crazy pants than just going, there are more things Shakespeare said, more things in heaven and earth, Horatio, right?
Yeah.
Like there are just things we don't know. it is possible that there are things that we don't understand, and that
way
there are
more
ghosts.
possible. I mean, it's whether you're science minded or you believe literally like how creation happened. I'm like, either way, that's pretty wild and speaks to a power bigger than anything we can conceive of.
But it's also part of that, to take all this back to the same place, that evolution question. If you're not open-minded enough to change and evolve, if I hadn't ultimately just felt like my brain broke apart and I had to admit there might be ghosts, the Glen House would never probably have ended up on Ghost Hunters. We would certainly not have survived. The Historical Association of Cape would not have survived the pandemic without that press.
Yeah.
We would not have. We were one of the few historic spaces that left the pandemic in a better fiscal position than we started it, although not great. We weren't open for the better part of 2 years because most of our docents were elderly, and we lost many people. A lot of our folks died during that time. And so we as an organization would not have survived without the ghost. And so for me, it was that lesson of, and it was painful. Listen, I have a real big kid job, and I went on a national television show as a crazy person who believed in ghosts. And then, when the pandemic came, honestly had to sort of fully embrace that. So we did tarot readings, we did those sorts of events, and I got a really hateful email that like, you've turned the Glen House into the gay ghost house. Yeah, maybe, but it's still open. And so I'll take all the gays and the ghosts. Come on, we need your $5 because we have light bill to pay. Right?
Yeah.
And it wasn't selling out because the Victorians were interested in this stuff. We do an awful lot of historical interpretation around the spiritualist movement that came after like the Civil War and the start of the Industrial Revolution. People were asking the same questions then that they're asking now. And to talk about that stuff is not sacrilegious. They weren't that different than us. And the interpretation is what it is. And the lesson becomes like, sometimes you can't hold on so tightly to the tea parties, to the past, right? Because we were all about flowers and Victorian tea parties and things.
Right.
And lose your opportunity to survive and live into a new future that can still encompass those. We still do tea parties. We still talk about real history. I did a tea party there
when I was in Girl Scouts.
I
think in the 70s, I think we were one of the first groups to have been in there.
We had the cutest tea party this last weekend. It was a 23-year-old's birthday, and these girls were so adorable, but they did a throwback tea party, and it was was she 20? Yeah, 23, right? 23 years old. It was such a cute idea, and I'm like, all of that stuff comes back around, but the house is only around because we weren't afraid to embrace the change to help us survive to where we could get back to tea parties.
That's right. Yeah.
All wraps around.
It does all wrap around. That's the lesson, right? Yep. That's the lesson. All right. You ready for your lightning round? Now, this is going to be challenging because it's quick answers.
Gotcha. Yes. For me, hard. One word.
Ghost or Bigfoot?
Ghost every time.
Yeah.
Did have a lady tell me she slept with Bigfoot once. Listen, you need to walk along on the ghost stories. The stories that I get, Sandra, just come with me on a Saturday night in October.
Okay, call me because we're coming back. I don't have time on the podcast to talk about the woman who slept with Bigfoot. That could be that's a whole episode.
Oh my God.
Okay, historic mansion or modern penthouse? I mean, I'm pretty sure I know the answer.
Depends, shockingly.
Okay.
Honestly, give me a warehouse apartment in Detroit over either of those. I'm a little creeped out, to be very honest. I love the spaces of a historic mansion, but I don't really want to live there. And I don't like the austerity of a modern penthouse.
I'm in Chris's urban lofts right now. I love them.
I should say, those are my kinds of jam.
Love them. Okay, one word friends would use to describe you.
Oh, God. I don't know. Eclectic? That's probably a bigger word than my friends would use.
This is when phone-in would come in handy. I should have had a lineup. All right. What's scarier, public speaking or seeing an actual ghost?
Oh, I don't ever want to. I have not ever seen an apparition, and I don't want to.
Okay, that's fair. Okay.
Yeah.
So, seeing the ghost. Okay. Most underrated thing about Cape?
Oh, God. The people. The food
that's
scene.
Beautiful.
You know, we talked about that yesterday. Dwayne Schaff said an incredible thing. It was after that comment about, people, what have you. And we were all sort of asked, our favorite thing, the riverfront, the river, whatever. And so I directly stole that from Dwayne. But I think it is true. All of the things that make this place cool are honestly because of the cool people. You've interviewed a lot of them already.
Yeah.
Like the cool people. Sean Wood. Listen.
I know. She won't come on.
But
she won't come on.
One of the coolest, because she loves music so passionately.
Yeah.
She wants her friends to experience live music. And so her answer, bring it here, right? How cool is that? The Underbergs and their house concerts.
Yeah.
How cool is that? The passion that they have. Carissa, Dwayne, Patrick,
I've also
Jason.
reached out to Dwayne, so I'm making you my ambassador.
I sort of say I'll pick on him about it.
It is, somebody asked me today, they're like, are you just going to interview people in Cape? And I said, that isn't my intention. And I've had a few others. I was like, but the more I'm spending time in my own community, the more fascinating people I'm finding.
Well, I love it. Jacob took some folks from, I think, the SBA, either Small Business Administration or the USDA Department of Ag, to Spectrum Record Company the other day.
Oh, yeah.
And they were like, this is the coolest place we've ever been, right? But that is the physical embodiment of Travis and Parker.
Absolutely.
And so everything that is cool in our community, I would say that about Russ Media, right? Like everything that is cool in this community is actually born out of the passion. Scout Hall doesn't exist without Gary Russ' passion. Right? I mean,
no.
it is the physical embodiment of the things that people love. Discovery Playhouse. I was lucky enough to be a part of the early founding of that facility. And that came from our city manager at the time and Kevin Priester. Like they wanted to see this. They had grandchildren and they wanted that in their community. So the place is a direct reflection of the people, and the people are pretty cool.
The people are pretty cool. They are pretty cool. That's a great, I don't even think we need to go further than that, honestly. People are cool.
Yeah.
People are cool.
And assholes. But we're going to go with cool
I'm
sometimes.
both of those many times.
Same.
So,
and sometimes sometimes it's the assholes that generate the cool stuff.
Yeah, you're not wrong. I mean, people that speak up and stand out aren't always liked.
Mavericks, when you walk down our river wall here, so if you're listening from outside and you're not familiar, you just found this podcast somehow.
Because it's the coolest thing out there.
Lucky you. But our river wall just shows like all of this history, and almost every single one of the people on that river wall and on our Missouri Wall of Fame were sort of controversial and kind of maverick in their own time. Like in their time, I'm not sure they were thought to be the coolest thing. But as we look at people like Scott Joplin, or we look at General Grant getting into a duel at the foot of our courthouse stairs, probably not cool at the time, but those are the things that embody the neat part of the history here.
Yeah, probably not cool as time. Yeah, probably not cool.
Probably not cool as time.
But we painted it on our wall.
Yeah, we did, and we're like, look, there's some rootin', some tootin', and some shooting taking place down here. Come to Port Cape.
And that's Fishbowl Roulette, folks. Rootin', tootin', shootin'. Here you go. That's how we're wrapping it up today. Christy, thank you.
It's been fun.
Thank you for being on. And to everybody listening, as always, if you like us, follow us, give me a review. Even if you want to tell me to go kick rocks, still give me the review. But, maybe say it nicer than that.
You're by the river. Can you just skip rocks?
Skip rocks.
Fun. Like,
just
skip some rocks.
Share it with somebody you love. As always, this is really just about creating some human connection and, light the world. Go light the world where you're at. Thanks for listening.